this is Sarah's first Lochaber committee. It seems a long time ago, Sarah, since you were elected, nearly 2 months now. And I know that you've been to plenty of other meetings, including full council. But welcome to this very first meeting of your area committee. Dot, do we have any apologies for absence?
No, Chairman, unless Alistair has any.
No, I don't, Chair, no.
Okay. Members, item 2 is declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations that you wish to give? Dennis.
Thanks, Chair. On item 9, which is the allocation of funds under the Place-Based Investment Fund, I have to declare an interest both for the Isle of Rum Community Trust and for the Harbour Housing Association, and would like to step out of the meeting for those 2 items when they're under discussion, please, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other items from either Blair or Sarah?
Yes.
Sarah. Sarah, could I ask you just, it would help me if you could put your digital hand up if you've got either, if you want to participate in the discussion, then I can just keep a track of everything that's going on. But go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, item 10, there is an application for funding by Ewan's Room. And just to say that I'm not employed by Ewan's Room, but before my election, I sent my CV and details to Ewan's Room because there's possibilities of employment in future at Ewan's Room for occasional work, occasional part-time work. So I've never heard from them, but there is that possibility in future.
So it's a non-financial interest at the moment, I think, Sarah, on that basis. Okay, and finally, I have a declaration of interest on item 5, which is discussion on Kinlochleven Associated Schools Group, as I have children both in Kinlochleven High School and Kinlochleven Primary School, but having applied the test, I will remain and participate in that discussion. So the formalities out of the way, we shall move on to item 3, which is our Police Scotland Local Committee performance report. And I can see Nick Hoff is with us. So over to you, Nick. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sarah. My name is Nick Hoff. I'm the local Lochaber area police inspector for Police Scotland. I've been in post for 18 months now, and I think this is the 3rd meeting that I've introduced the area report for Police Scotland for Lochaber. Hopefully you've all had a chance to see the report. The report is actually in a new format for this meeting, and actually contains a lot of information, and it's well worth a read if you haven't had a chance to have a look at it and take forward some of the sort of implications of the information that's in the report. And I think the sort of layout of the report is much better, reads much better, and gives people a lot more access to the sort of statistics and the figures, and also sort of is laid out in a manner which focuses on our force priorities and our local area priorities. The first thing I would like to say is that the Area Commander Chief Inspector Jenny Valentine was hoping to make this meeting this morning. She's currently had another meeting and engaged in travel for that meeting, but she was very much hopeful to actually introduce this this report to yourselves to pass it on. So she has offered her apologies. Just to sort of clarify, the Area Commander Chief Inspector role covers an area which is we call South Highland, which actually covers Lochaber, Skye, and also near and Aviemore and Bednock and Strathspey. So the area commander has the coverage for all 3 of those areas. But the Lochaber area is covered well, and the Chief Inspector passes on her apologies for not being able to participate in the meeting this morning, but has added the sort of the forward on that report to give everyone a sort of overview of the crime and the patterns and the process in the Lochaber area this morning. I think the most important, now I've done this several times, and I think probably the most important thing to say is that we are, despite the sort of the figures and some of the, I suppose, the headline figures of some reduction in crime and some of the trends in our new crime allocations, we are still primarily a community-based policing team, and our local policing team, in terms of our response officers, still try to serve everyone in a manner which is very, very much community-based, and that protection of people in terms of keeping people safe and keeping the community safe is our primary responsibility. And we do it in a way with our sort of internal partners within the police areas, which hopefully works very well. And in Lochaber, some of the area, the sort of national divisions we have, like road policing and CID, work very well with us as we move forward to try and prevent crime and deter crime and keep people safe. So moving through to the report, just very briefly, I think the first section, which is Lochaber at a glance, obviously talks about our main 6 priorities of road safety, road crime, antisocial behaviour, acquisitive crime, protecting vulnerable people, and serious and organised crime. And then there is the additional counter-terrorism and domestic extremism section as well. I think the first thing to say about the statistics in terms of the period which has been reported, which is obviously April to December of this year, is that overall there has been a reduction in crime and recorded crime across most of the areas. And I think it's important to sort of try and actually quantify that in terms of, is this just an impact of COVID, which we've obviously now been dealing with for almost 2 years, and we have seen significant changes in the sort of the policing context in Lochaber and the Highlands, and whether or not it really is just only COVID, or there's other changes, I think, in people's behaviour and the processes that are going forward. I think that the road safety and road crime sort of headline statistics there are showing lesser offences, but then, for instance, the failure to insure against third-party risks shows that there's an increase of 37.9% in terms of people being detected driving without insurance. I would say that that's probably as a result of the ability now of members of the public to actually check online if people have insurance and have valid MOTs and things like that with the apps that we have now, and then we have a higher level of reported information to us. And on top of that, we obviously have the road policing officers able to stop more vehicles at sort of the periods when there was less work because of COVID, I suppose, and they were actually concentrating on stops to discuss with people what their travel was, and also at the same time they would have then done other checks to detect insurance party risks and other sort of similar offences. The antisocial behaviour and disorder and violence statistics are obviously something which we are really monitoring closely, and just to see if there's an area that we're continuing to perform in. And I think it's important to read the numbers in brackets for the Lochaber area. So when we talk about percentages, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. The numbers are in brackets behind the sort of percentage statistics, and indicators like antisocial behaviour reduced by 8.3 sort of percent, although that might be a bit of a misprint there on that one, because I see that also it said 63% increase against the year to date. The significant one there to talk about, and perhaps people can come back to me, is the serious assault statistics. And if you go back to if you look at the report and you go all the way down to the tables at the bottom, which go into I suppose the various areas and the crime statistics in a bit more detail, I've highlighted that myself when I read the information, and we have a sort of year-to-date increase of serious assaults, which is up at a variation of 5, an increase of 5 in terms of number. I think the most important thing to say is that the serious assault incidents are, because they quite often, I suppose, convey concern that people are being assaulted at random. Certainly 95% of them involve people who know other people, and they are sort of, should we say, peer group on peer group assaults in a sort of, I suppose, a very much a difficult set of circumstances in terms of the people that are involved. Some of them have vulnerabilities and sort of, significant alcohol and other concerns, and these tend to lead to fracas and fallouts between the people. But the other thing to say is that these incidents are dealt with very seriously, and that's when we obviously have our CID officers who assist us, and those incidents are exhaustively investigated, and they're all detected. There are no undetected serious assaults in the reporting time from the year to date. And as we move down through the other areas of our sort of priorities, I think it's quite important to say that coming back, the drug driving, the road safety and road crime, the breakdown in further down the page there about the drug driving and the drink driving offences continues to rise in terms of the detections, in terms of our drink driving and drug driving, and that's an indicator of, one, the proactivity that's being conducted by the road policing unit, but also the use of these wipes, which we can now use, which detect drug drivers, and as soon as we have an indication in terms of smell or behaviour or conduct of the person, we're entitled to, we have lawful, reasonable, able to check and give them a wipe to see if they've been consuming drugs in the last 48 hours, or they have them in the blood system, and then they are arrested and a blood sample is taken by a doctor, and then that proceeds further down the line. Now, we are a bit behind because of COVID in terms of the conviction rates of those, and they will eventually catch up, but it shows that we are completely, I suppose, pushing forward this idea that drug driving is not acceptable, and we investigate that, and we try very, very hard to ensure that the road policing units and the local patrol officers are detecting that as much as possible. I think the other two areas that I really wanted to highlight before I move on and open it up to questions, because I'm sure you've all had a chance to have a look, and there'll be some particular questions that some of the councillors will have in terms of how we're progressing with things, or perhaps try to clarify a few points. Is the section on acquisitive crime actually shows a variation in terms of housebreaking, which I have to say includes breaking into outbuildings and sheds for sort of stealing bikes and theft of implements. But those figures are showing that a year-to-date reduction of down by 8, which is actually quite interesting, because the year through 2020 and 2021, which was more significantly, I suppose, affected by COVID, has a higher rate at the moment in terms of the year-to-date averages. So that's still, we're talking low numbers in the area. More often than not now, we do have quite a lot of reports of premises that are left empty for a long time being broken into, and particularly rural places. So, for instance, I know that those statistics from last year include a couple of bothies, or 2 or 3 bothies, that were actually sort of broken into, and they were all actually cleared up in terms of one line of investigation, in terms of one person who was using those bothies in the area. So those statistics are still very low and show that the Highlands are still a very, very safe place to live, and that people's property is protected. And the other area of concern, obviously, on that acquisitive crime section would be the, this ongoing sort of rise in fraud and banking protocol crime, and these various scams which people are being sort of drawn into, which we still have a concern about. And I think that's one of our priorities, to continue to support the community and work with them to try to reduce the times that this happen, and give vulnerable people in the community support and information and sort of protection and safety advice in terms of protecting themselves and not falling foul of these people that cold call or work off a scam based on a text or an email. And there is actually at the bottom of the report, obviously, just for the local sort of perspective, I think this quite often that some of the committee groups and the action groups, it's been discussed about ways to get messages out to people, and there's quite a lot of useful information there at the bottom of the report, which obviously we're able to, if other sort of local groups want to be able to access information on how to help prevent crime in various areas, and also wanted to administer any type of literature in their newsletters and things like that, then they can obviously, there's some examples at the bottom there of how we are presenting things in terms of our approach to give information to people through Police Scotland, and those leaflets and sort of flyers that are at the bottom that are attached can easily be added to other people's leaflets and information as they move through. And the other sort of, I suppose, elephant in the room to discuss in terms of the sort of the focus of the police work over the last 18 months and particularly the last 6 months, which obviously the report refers to, which has still been there, is, I suppose, visitor management in terms of how we've been adapting and dealing with a huge influx of people coming into the Lochaber area and using Glencoe, Glen Etive, Arasaig Mora and Glen Nevis and the outdoor sort of beauty of the area, and this proliferation of people who are either camping, using camping vans and camping facilities, rough camping, wild camping, and the whole sort of cacophony of various forms of leisure, which has had people coming to the Highlands. And there's been, the positive reflection, and Dot would obviously be able to speak about this, is that we actually had a plan in place sort of this time last year as we knew we were moving forward out of the COVID restrictions, and we introduced sort of a local visitor management group, which was largely based on people from the ELG group, but also an awful lot of other third-party contacts across our local partners in terms of landowners, ranger services, and all of the sort of the band of Dot's area in terms of the council and waste management and roads and transport. I'm very actually pleased with the process that we've had. A lot of significant weekends went past through the summer, which resulted in a lot of good work which conducted by my police officers in various areas in terms of the that interaction they were having with the visitors, to sort of reduce this, give information and reduce the opportunities for the type of, I suppose, eco sort of issues that were being affected in the road traffic and the sort of problems that were occurring in areas like Arasaig and Mora, and that's what worked very well. And the information there on the sort of that network at the bottom of the page, which talks about the NC 500. There was obviously that doesn't actually come into our area, so that's just a slight reference to the NC 500 has been made, but that obviously doesn't quite affect us in the same way in Lochaber as the other areas. But obviously all the other areas of visitor management has been one of our focuses through the last 6 months. So, Chair, I think I'll leave it there and pass on to onto the floor to see if there's anyone who wants to discuss anything in finer detail, have any questions to put to me, and I can obviously reflect back and give them some hopefully perspective.
Thank you very much, Nick. As always, a comprehensive report. Much appreciated. I think one of the most important messages that we as councillors should bear in mind is that Lochaber remains an extremely safe place to live and work, despite what some trashy journalists elsewhere in the country would like to portray, that we've suddenly become the crime capital of Great Britain. We know that is far from truth. Although obviously we from time to time face particular issues which Nick and his team are very good with dealing with. I would like to say, Nick, I note that you said right at the end of your report that visitor management is an issue for other areas. You acknowledge that it is an issue for Lochaber, particularly in Arasaig and Mora. I would add Glen Nevis and Glen Etive areas, which we've discussed in detail at previous meetings, but I would also say and urge you to continue making visitor management and that engagement a priority wherever possible in the future, because I think as we come out of the pandemic, we will see numbers increase, and people have obviously got a taste for coming to the Highlands over the last 2 years when they've been unable to to travel abroad, and I can see that the issue will become acute again during the summer months. So please bear that in mind. I'm going to go across to Councillor Henderson and then Councillor Finland next.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning. Good morning, Nick. I was going to touch on that, but I'll come back to that side. If I've got 2 or 3 just questions, observations, things to talk about. It is interesting you've pointed out on the drug and alcohol and the fact on driving that the figures are actually up there, but you've obviously got better ways of detecting. But the odd thing is the actual statistic on the possession of drugs is well down, which is I'm glad to see, but you would think if the detection methods are better, you would think that also would be reflected there as well. But it's maybe just a comment from yourself on that. And what my other main point is probably around complement of policemen that you actually have at your disposal and where they are actually available. We remember the incident at Christmas time up in Malig, and it would be just interesting if you could comment on that. Was the actual there about time being able to get deployment in place? Was that actually the case, or were the reports that we were actually getting wrong as well? It'd be interesting just to dispel that. Why I'm interested in that is just really to give us reassurance that we still have the rapid deployment to that area, because it does tie in with tourism as well, which because of the problems, the way that they appear there, you can't really predict. It's suddenly something that just manifests itself very quickly and needs almost that rapid response. So that would be good to know whether you actually still have that plan at your disposal, the same as last year, bearing in mind the fact that rangers have been introduced and they've done a fantastic job, and I think you'll agree as police that they have helped no end, and I'm glad that we're able to certainly continue that side of it to work along with yourselves there. But there have been reports it's been difficult for them to actually get the backup that they may need to be able to sort a situation at the time. So if you could just give me a wee bit response and assurance that you'll be available for them this coming season. Thanks.
Okay, can we deal with Sarah's questions first, and then we'll come back to Nick? Sarah?
Right. Good morning, Nick, and thank you for the report. I have a question about hate crime, which is mentioned in the report. I'm finding the figures a bit low. So do they include hate crime online? Because I know it's been an issue, particularly during lockdown, with lots of vulnerable people actually stuck at home and being exposed to abuse online. Could you give me shed a bit more light on how the statistics work and if online is included? Thank you.
Okay, Nick, would you like to deal with those, and then we'll come to Dennis after you've responded to those questions?
Thank you, Chair. So, Alan, thank you for your questions. I think can you just clarify one point for me, Alan? You mentioned an incident in Malig at Christmas time. I just was looking for a little bit more info, just so I can remind myself that I'm talking about the right thing.
The West Highland Hotel, the pyromaniac who got in there.
The fire at the hotel, was that what you said? Yes, no problem. So I think obviously in terms of our resources, we currently have we continue to have a very good complement of our allocated resources in terms of the officers we had. So we work on a system at the moment where I have a 5-team process which cover 24/7. This is local policing, the local response policing, who cover 24/7. So the CID and the road policing units work shifts up until 0200 in the morning, and they're not always available sort of between 0200 and 0700 in the morning, and they're available for that sort of response at that point. So after that, those hours, we are restricted to our local community policing team. And at the moment, I have a sort of a complement of 35 officers in Fort William and Glencoe and Malig and Strontian, and that works effectively on a system of having one sergeant for each team of 5 teams, and then 4 or 5 officers on the team, depending. There's a little bit of a variation. Some of the teams have 4, some of the teams have 5. And because what we do is we combine our Glencoe and Strontian and Malig officers are all allocated to one of the 5 teams, and they will work alongside the team in Fort William. And the core shift of the team in Fort William will cover the full 24/7 period, whereas the Glencoe and the Malig officers have a work a shift where they work 1800, for instance, to 0300 on a sort of weekend shift, when the other part of the team based in Fort William are doing a full night shift. So there's a sort of mix and match approach in terms of allowing the community officers of Glencoe, Strontian and Malig to have more opportunity to be interacting with the community at times which are more appropriate, when the community are sort of more, I suppose, active, rather than having them on duty until sort of 0700 hours, between 0300 hours and 0700 hours in Malig. That said, what we call our operational base level is to have 1 sergeant on duty and 2 officers at any one time. And more often than not, at times when there might be annual leave or people are absent through sickness, that's our operating base level is reduced to that. And quite often between those hours of 0300 hours and 0700 hours on a midweek type of event, when the call numbers are very, very low, we only have a sergeant and 2 officers on covering either Malig and Fort William or a combination of the area. So that at times that can be the sort of the amount of officers that we do have on. That said, we also have crossover periods, obviously, on our Friday, Saturday and Sunday weekend shifts, where the night shifts start at 2100 hours and do 2100 hours to 0700 hours, and the late shift do 1800 hours to 0300 hours. So during that time, we have a double complement. So we actually, more often than not, will have 2 sergeants on and 6 or 7 local police officers plus response officers from road policing who are able to assist, and CID as well at times. So the complement of officers, to focus on that, I suppose our operational base level is a little bit harsh, but that's what we call OBLs. That's the minimum number of officers we're on allowed to have on at the moment, as a result of the determination by the divisional command management team. So that gives you a little bit of perspective. Now, that particular incident in the West Highland Hotel, so in Malig, there was, I think it's fair to say, there was a known nominal who was involved, and the process that happened in terms of the response process. I would need to look back and just double check, Alan, because I think it happened again. In fact, now I'm just using a bit of cognitive memory. I think it happened about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I think it was a Tuesday into a Wednesday or something very similar. So that said, you will see that the type of profile, there will not be a Malig officer on duty in Malig at that time of night. Sometimes the Malig officers and the Glencoe officers get their shift changed when we have officers on leave from the Fort William team or absences or training. So at all times there will always be two officers on and a sergeant in those hours, but sometimes there will not be a specific Malig officer who's on duty. And if a Malig officer is on duty between those hours, they will invariably be manning up the Fort William section, so it'll actually be through in Fort William. But at the time, it was 2 officers who were in Fort William who actually attended that incident, and the sergeant was on duty here in Fort William, and they attended from Fort William. So response time to Fort William with blue lights, in the darkness in the winter, depending on driving, is probably about 40 minutes. And that is a sort of, that is our most extreme level of response, unfortunately, in terms of Lochaber. That is the most difficult response that we have to make in terms of that speed of getting officers on the ground. And it has to be said that there were a lot of locals who assisted and helped, and I use that in a very, very sort of generous way, should we say, that a lot of them actually probably assisted sort of beyond the normal bounds of putting themselves in danger, shall we say, in terms of implementing the sort of an appropriate, because it was a particularly violent individual, and there was a difficult situation. So the locals responded, officers attended as best we could, and that was one of the sort of, I suppose, the classic scenarios where you have a significant incident that happens when we only have a low number of officers, and then we have this process where we have to call out officers. So for a significant incident like that, significant crime, significant event where you end up with a custody, and then you have a crime scene which needs to be locked down. You have to have then forensic and CID involvement for the follow-up process. Everyone gets called out off rest days or overtime, and we use an overtime process to facilitate that so comprehensive and relentless investigation that's required as a result of that. So what it's, again, there will be times, and I can only sort of just say to the people of Malig and Mora that the model that we currently work on, and to be honest, we have worked on that, ever since my time in Lochaber. The Malig officers have always finished at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning at the weekends. So that timing of a type of call like that inevitably ends up sort of providing I suppose our real feasibly longest response time. And it would have to be fair to say that we have had, it's been noted, and it is getting addressed as best as possible by senior management team. There are times when we've had quite a couple of significant incidents in the last 6 months where officers have been assaulted, and those incidents have been in a situation where I suppose the response for backup for the officers in terms of other resources to get to them has been not delayed, but it has been, one of those scenarios that we currently end up putting ourselves in. So officers are constantly putting themselves out there, single crewed or even just with just a double crewed unit. And it is the nature of rural policing, and they are, sort of getting the job done as best they can to address these matters. And a couple of significant incidents. There was obviously one of the visitor management incidents in the summer at Mora at Silver Sands, where an officer was assaulted, and I had another significant incident as well just in December where a couple of officers were assaulted, and members of the public assisted and helped. And it's always been the nature of, I suppose, policing in rural areas. And it was the same when I was in the Western Isles in Benbecula. We are reliant on the goodwill of the officers, I think, to keep putting themselves on the line for that type of response. And yes, it's an ongoing sort of, I suppose, thing that's constantly being reviewed, but the model has worked pretty well, I suppose, in terms of the sheer resources we actually have and the sheer geography we have to cover. So hopefully that's managed to answer that and give some reassurance, Alan. Then you can pass that on to your to your sort of your community and your members. In terms of the drugs statistics, yes, you're right. And what I would say is that probably we're still the numbers are probably down. I suspect the numbers of drug possession. Now that was just as long as there is two things. Remember, there's drugs possession and possession with intent to supply, and I think maybe that's the is that the statistic you looked at?
I can't remember which one. It's just
I think the thing to say is that so when the road policing unit, who are the ones who are predominantly doing lots of these drugs wipes, when they get to stop vehicles, the person possessing drugs doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. They possess them, so you can normally tell from the smell in the car or the person's behaviour or manner whether or not they are intoxicated or they have some sort of drug intoxication. So you won't necessarily seize drugs at the same time as you do a positive drugs wipe. The possession of drugs is a different sort of statistic to being concerned in the supply of drugs or having the drugs. But I suspect that the possession numbers are probably down as a reflection of the continuing impact that we've had over the last 6 months of the licensed premises being very, very not sort of operating fully as the way they have done, because quite a lot of the drugs possession offences come about as a result of people being involved, being out in the sort of nighttime economy, and the officers being able to conduct that type of search when they're out and about. So that's my only sort of I suppose just guess, should we say, to understanding why those numbers sort of differentiate so much. Thank you. And just moving on to Sarah's the observation or question, I think it's important to say that I haven't obviously got a breakdown there of the online hate crime statistics, and it's probably fair to say that hate crime is currently classified, gets slightly differently. So we have another thing called, most of our, we do deal with abuse via the internet and social media, and that more often than not is marked up as what we call a communications offence. So hate crime is a sort of more specific crime where someone perceives that they have been either abused or spoken to in a manner which is as a result of the perception of the other person, or they perceive that as a result of their race, gender, or sexuality, they are specifically being targeted. So it tends to be more of a one-on-one individual process, and for an online process, for someone to be sort of effectively, I suppose, charged with a hate crime, that type of online abuse would need to specifically single someone out for the sort of either their gender or their race, and that would need to be involved. Whereas if someone is either making threats to someone that they're going to perhaps kill them, or they're going to come round to their house and assault them, and various other derogatory type of abusive language and comments, that would not be marked down as a hate crime, but that would be marked up as what we call a communications offence, which we deal with a prolific number of those with online sort of back and forth discussion between people, whereas I suppose now it's more and more common, and people feel they have a right to speak to people online in a manner that they just don't. 20 years ago they would maybe speak to someone like that down the pub, and then they would end up being either thrown out of the pub, or the other person would leave and report it to us. So I think the online concern in terms of people being bullied is probably not reflected in the hate crime statistics. So we continue to have a higher level of vulnerable persons and people sort of reporting that they are receiving online abuse. But it's still, I suppose I have to say, it's still minor. We don't have, and it has to be fair to say in Lochaber, we don't have a large number of people who are reporting that they are being bullied and harassed online, like some of the sort of, I suppose, the headline incidents you would see in terms of school children perhaps being online and during lockdown stuck indoors and communicating online, where they've received a huge amount of bullying and abuse, and then they've unfortunately sort of self-harmed or had some significant event where they've perhaps tried to complete suicide. And it's fair to say that that context of online abuse and online behavior between individuals and between other people is reflected in other statistics, in terms of perhaps if someone has been online and they've been abused, or there's been some intimation that there's some sexual harassment, then that would go down as the investigating under a different sort of circumstance. So hate crime specifically, the numbers remain low, and that's really down to the sort of the definition and the difference in the definition of the how we sort of record things and report things. But it certainly doesn't mean that we are actually, we have still a good detection rate for hate crime, and we still respond very, very victim oriented in approach to people who suffer hate crime, and specifically those ones that are specifically related to any of the sort of diversity or equality matters. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of sort of perspective, Sarah, to give you a bit of advice on that interpretation.
Thank you very much, Nick, for those comprehensive answers. I was worried we had slipped into an episode of Line of Duty then when you started talking about OBLs and no nominals, but thankfully you told us what the acronyms were. So Dennis, I think you have a question.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not so much a question, Nick, to which I need a response, because I don't need a response, but it is an observation with a request at the tail end of it, please. And the request is essentially that you pass up the burden of my observation to Chief Inspector Valentine, and I understand that she couldn't be with us today. I just want to endorse comments made by both Councillors Baxter and Henderson about the importance of policing in terms of reinforcing our rangers, and making sure that we have a police presence visible in the summer tourist season. And the reason for that is that prevention is much better than cure, as we all know. And I think they have a calming influence. If we have police on the ground, it has a calming influence on behaviour. You have been disarmingly frank about the limitation of resources in the area. When we look at the numbers and then we put that against the Lochaber population of about 20,000, it probably doesn't seem unreasonable, particularly in a calm day in wintertime when nothing very much is happening. But I think what we have to take into account is that the summer population of Lochaber is absolutely enormous. I doubt very much that anybody has actually done a count of how many visitors we have on a summer's day. But my favourite statistic in all of this is the annual number of visitors to Finland, a village of about 110 or so, pre-COVID, 385,000 in a year. Now, if you multiply that across Lochaber, it is a huge input, a huge number of people coming into the tourist coming in during the tourist season. And if I may, can I offer a gentle challenge which I would like you to put up to your senior officers? The model which you have described, as you have said, has worked well in the past, and I don't challenge that for a moment. But my question is that really sufficient given what's happened post-COVID? We have had an enormous number of people coming into the area, and I do wonder whether resources shouldn't be drafted in to help out local resources at the time. We're all aware of the fact that police officers go down to help out with big international events, things like COP26, police officers drafted in from all over the place. And the point that I'd like to make is that Lochaber's population swells enormously during summer, and I suspect we probably could do with some extra resources during those summer months. And if that could be passed up, I'd be very grateful. Chair, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And I saw that Nick was taking notes there, so and he's popped his hand up. So hopefully it's to confirm that he will pass on that message to his appropriate colleagues.
Could I if I've got time, Chair, I'd like to just respond to that a little bit, because I can hopefully make Dennis aware, I think, of the process we put into place last year, and Dot will be able to attest to this, and the planning that's already going on for visitor management and our peak season. So first, in terms of the visitor management aspect and the numbers of people that come for the leisure and the outdoors, and the function of the rangers and things, this last season has just gone past, through Philip Waite, who coordinates the ranger service, and across the whole of Lochaber and Wester Ross, the process has been very, very good, and we've had a lot of people on the ground. And actually, the work, close working, particularly in Araseg and Mora, has to be said, between the rangers and my Malig officers, has been very, very notable. And positive reports from the community and from other people about that sort of process. And we are trying to continue. We've sort of just actually had a couple of meetings already, and Dot will be able to say that, which is putting further plans in place, and trying to extract as much resource out of all the partner agencies as possible, in terms of having that combined joint approach to the introduction, the education, and the sort of enforcement process of anything that visitor management entails. And it is an ongoing challenge. And I think in terms of our resourcing model, in terms of the numbers on the ground, yes, and I always, when I mention the operational base levels, I do always sort of cringe slightly, because it must seem, when you hear the numbers, you must think, wow, how do they get by with that? That exposes people to a lot of risk. But it has to be said that those numbers have been operating for quite a while, but that's in the extreme. And if you think about the other statistics I mentioned about when we have the crossover and we have the other shifts on, and obviously including road policing, in terms of the number of officers that we probably have available to respond to particular calls in the Lochaber area, and the specialisms, we are quite often looking at sort of 7 or 8 plus 2 sergeants on any sort of given hour. So those hours between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning are very, very different, in terms of our response model. But apart from that, we have specific ability to staff up. And actually, I've just I've mentioned on behalf of Inspector Valentine, I've been working with her closely. We now have extra police accommodation in Fort William, which has come online in the last year or so. So areas like Skye already have officers coming in on secondment. So I've just literally last week put out adverts. So we have hopefully 2 officers coming in on secondment from another area through the period of April through to September to bolster our numbers on the local policing front, because we're now able to offer them accommodation, and that has come about as a result of sort of that sort of investment by Police Scotland to actually provide us with accommodation. They do see, the senior management team in N Division do see that there is, the model's not perfect, and at times of high demand we need more people. There was a recent review of staffing, and actually I've had a couple of people who've come online under my line management from the support team, a sergeant and 2 or 3 police constables, and they are assisting us, and they are available to assist with local policing as well. But also we have the other areas. We have the sort of police search and rescue team, who are called the sort of operational support department. That covers also perhaps our dog unit, and also we have other officers from a thing called a flexi unit who come down. And we have in the last 6 months, the previous to the summer, specific periods that we know lead to high demand, like bank holiday weekends and things, and we're able to put plans in place to have extra visibility and extra officers down, and we do target that, and we try to use, I suppose, our knowledge that we've gained over the last 2 years of COVID to sort of counteract that with a proactive plan and deployment in due course. And at times of high demand, there is the ability to access outside resources from, well, I say outside, but obviously from Skye and from Badennock on Strathspey and Inverness, depending on that. So that sort of model that responds. So the number of people that we have is sort of more significant than it sounds, and we are specifically we have to sort of box clever, I suppose, and we are working hard to do that with our sort of resources and our planning approach, and interacting very well with our partners and working as closely as we can to continue that sort of good work across the areas what we specifically suffer from in Lochaber in terms of the visitor management, which obviously includes Glen Etive, Glen Nevis and Arasagan and Mora as our main points of concern that we are addressing. And we have already had success over the last 6 months in terms of adapting, because we're having a visitor management every meeting every week, taking a review of what happened at the weekend, and then moving on and putting plans in place to address that.
Thank you very much, Nick. Members, I think we'll draw our discussion to a close, and you're asked to note the contents of the police report and, of course, the contributions in responses that Nick has made today. You content to do that?
Noted. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. Right, members. It was very remiss of me. I missed the fact that Liz Denovan had joined us just after we commenced the meeting. A very warm welcome to Liz, who tells me that she's been appointed as the Executive Chief Officer for Lochaber. I'm not sure whether she's delighted by that prospect or horrified by it, but welcome on board, Liz, and I'm sure you will have a very warm welcome from all the Lochaber members. And the second thing is, with your permission, members, I would like to move forward the report on the place-based investment project, because Alan Webster has another meeting at 12. So I propose to take that immediately after the next item, which is the roads budget. And I believe we are joined by Richard Porteous, who I did see lurking somewhere a moment ago. And of course, we have Colin Howell with us, who will answer all the difficult questions that members put to Richard. So, Richard, I think this is a fairly straightforward report. It's been discussed to a certain extent at a previous ward business meeting. So I don't propose to ask you to present to it, but I would ask members if they have any particular comments or questions on this particular item. So I'm going to go to Councillor Henderson first of all.
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, and I'm glad you've linked up the two, because since we're giving all the money across toward 21 in this one here, hopefully you'll give it back to us in the place-based one in the next one there. So, but no, being serious, what I would like to say is that, Richard, I'm glad at least you've taken on board some of the comment that I made there, and you've at least put the Bohini one into it. Would it be possible, since we're also looking at the Kinlochur and the 40,000 sits with us, I think it sat with us, or the vexed question of Kinlochur has sat with us since way back in 2007, and somehow or other it's survived. I just wonder if you'd be able to transfer that and look at probably somewhere that serves an awful lot more people, and that's Morer Hill, because I'll be honest, up in the Malig area, you have fixed a lot of problems there, and you've fixed on the other side of the railway crossing there in Morer as well, which everyone's grateful for. But you have a hill that has major structural problems as well as drainage problems. And it might just be a bit more beneficial to us overall for the whole of Lochaber to get that one fixed for. Thanks.
Okay, Richard, would you like to respond to that first question?
Thanks very much. Yes, we have in the programme on row 25 in Appendix 2, the North Lochmorer Brackera Road. Is that the same one that you? No, different one.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
believe it or not, we have two roads.
Yeah.
One's an extension of the other one, to be honest.
We'll certainly take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, are you content with that, Alan?
Sorry, I put my thumb up. You didn't probably see that. Yes, thanks. That's great. Yep.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Allen next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for the report. No guesses what I'm going to ask. I always ask about Grange Terrace, don't I? And I notice in Appendix 2 that you've got Grange Terrace B, £170,000. Is that additional work to that identified for the current financial year, which amounts to 300,000? Thank you.
Chairman, that will be the remaining half because of the large size of those works there. To accommodate it, we split it over this year and next year. So it's at the moment it's programmed for March, the first half of the works, and then it will just continue through to completion, with the following half being completed out of this next financial year's budget.
Fine, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll take Councillor Rickson and then Councillor Fannett.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Richard, for your report. You were absolutely right to point out in the risk section that we're not maintaining steady state. So essentially, in our area, just like in much of the rest of Highland, we're signing up to a progressive degradation of our roads, which we can't avoid because of budget restrictions. But I think you're quite right to point that out as an ongoing risk. Like Councillor Henderson, I have noticed that most of the roads are in Ward 21. Of the 11 financed projects, only 2 are actually in Ward 11. I was going to ask you 2 specific questions. One is what is covered by the word embankments, and is that the work that's ongoing at Try? And I also wanted to ask you about the North Lochmorer Road. I spent some time, a morning in fact, with 2 of your officers along the Brackera Road recently, and I know how extensive the problems are and just quite what the scale of work would have to be. So I would look forward to more information about that. But my specific question, please, is about bridge repairs in Morer. Now, as you know, on the Brackera Road, there have been proposals to repair the bridges. This was noted in our minutes for our November meeting. In fact, it's in the minutes of to be approved later on today. It was discussed in November. We discussed it at a ward business meeting recently. And I would still like, if possible, please, an update of when these repairs are going to take place, as requested before. And the reason that I say that is that I actually looked up last night, and I have a letter from February 21 indicating that it was hoped that those bridge repairs could take place that year in 21. And now obviously we're in 22. Now I fully understand with COVID and so on, it's a really difficult time, but certainly the residents along that road are greatly concerned with when those bridges are going to be repaired. And having walked across one of them yesterday, I myself noticed the dip. And I thought, right, I need to follow this up. So I would greatly welcome an update on the bridges there, some information about the embankments and the north side of Lochaber. But I welcome the sort of two proposals that have come forward for this ward. And I would draw your attention, as Councillor Henderson has done, to the ongoing needs both in Mora and Malig. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson. Richard?
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, embankments at Try is more as a bunding to build up the verges from a safety perspective at those locations to prevent people parking on those particular locations. Embankment contingency tends to be for landslips, either above or below the road, large or small. In terms of North Lochaber, which is, as I said, in row 25 there. So yeah, appreciate comments from both councillors on that one. And as you say, we have been working with yourselves and the local community looking at that. And we're hopeful that we can put together some sort of a package to address as much as that as we can in terms of the road, parking and the bridges through the various area budgets, tourism budget, bridges budget that we have at our disposal. And reporting on bridges is something that we're very mindful of, and as part of the additional capital that we got for bridges this year, including the Health and Prosperity Fund, then there will be a reporting mechanism for that. So hope to give that reassurance on that one. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Finland.
Good morning, Richard.
Morning.
There is a mention of the road to Drimnin, B841, and there's going to be some treatment, 1700 meters. I was at a community council meeting recently, and there was concern that it may not be the most seriously damaged part of the road that is being done. Would you be able to give me more details about what section of the road is going to be treated? And also, if you could give me a more general update on the rest of the road, what the plan is. Thank you.
I'll do my best. We, as far as I know, it is the worst section of the road that we're treating because we're trying to prioritise spend in that regard. I do know that that's, what is that, about £200,000 plus in row 5 of the Appendix 2. We've identified, £600,000 to £700,000 worth of works we would ideally like to do, across the whole network. Backtracking a bit now, but just to say that, in Lochaber, my sort of rough calcs show that 42% of the road network in Lochaber are A and B roads, which is considerably higher than the Highland average, which is about 32% across all Highland roads. So that's a challenge to us, and that tends to be where we have to prioritise our spending. And we've got surface defects across the whole network, so of course we have to prioritise on the A and B roads generally first, and because they're wider, they tend to take more money to repair, so they're quite a drain on our capital budget, which leaves less around the network for other roads. So we're always prioritising and trying to spend the money on those worst sections first. We're only in February. The winter's not over yet. Any pothole anywhere, any road could deteriorate in sections other than those we've already identified, but we have to make a programme somewhere. We say in the report, obviously, that priorities could change according to need and having to address safety matters and storm damage, etc., that could occur through the remainder of the winter. We don't even know the full budget next year, of course, and that's yet to be confirmed, but we have to make a plan. So this is the current plan, and we continue our dialogue with yourselves and community councils as we go through the year. So yeah, happy to continue that conversation and provide you with with more information. Not a problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Could you put that in an email? Which section of the road has been identified, and I can
Yeah, can do. Yeah,
the community.
Will do.
Thank
will do.
Thank you very much for that question, Sarah. You preempted me because I would have asked about it as well. So I would add, can we have an update on the A828 around the Lochaber side, particularly from Tresleg to Ardgour, which again, Community Council in Ardgour for many years have expressed concerns about the deterioration of the road. It particularly gets a hammering whenever the A82 is closed for any significant amount of time and traffic is diverted via the Corrin ferry. Richard, you will appreciate it's a single track road. Passing places are particularly troublesome, and they frequently ask about contributions from the Timber Transport Fund. Can you advise of where we are in terms of making an application to the Strategic Timber Transport Fund? And as we've got Mr. Howell here as well, I would like to invite him down to Lochaber and so that he can have a look at some of the roads, not just in my own ward, but I'm sure Councillor Henderson and Councillor Rickson would very much like him to have a look at some of the particular challenges within their own ward. And I'm sure, Colin, we can also incorporate a visit to the Invercoe Bridge and actually celebrate a bit of funding in Lochaber as well. But maybe we can get a commitment from you this morning to arrange to come down to Lochaber before we enter the purdah period ahead of the election. So Richard, can you just give an update as to the Strategic Timber Transport Fund, and then maybe Colin can just come in and accept our invitation.
Thanks. I can confirm that a bid is going in this year for passing places on that section of the A861 that you mentioned. A861 in general is, we've identified well over £1 million worth of work that ideally we would like to do on the A86, the whole of the A861. Those are priority schemes only, and so you can see that we can't spend all our money on the A861. Unfortunately, we've had to prioritise it across the network, but we need more money. Short answer.
Yeah, we understand that, Richard. It's a message that you give us at every committee meeting. Colin, would you like to come down to Lochaber at some point?
It would be my pleasure, Chair. So I mean, I came out to Lochaber not that terribly long ago because we actually went and had a visit at Cool. We looked at some of the issues at Carr's Corner, and we also went to Corrin Ferry. But I would, I'm an engineer, so the opportunity to go to Invercoe Bridge and see some of the works would be fantastic. The opportunity, some of the challenges that you've got in Lochaber with regard to your roads, I would be very pleased to see that. So thank you for the invite, Chair.
Okay, well, we'll liaise with Dot to organise that, if I may ask Dot to do that. So, members, happy to note the report.
Noted.
Thank you very much, members. Time's pressing on, but can I ask for your indulgence to have a 2-minute comfort break? And then we will commence with the place-based investment programme, because I suspect that's likely to be a longer discussion. So 2 minutes, please. Councillor Henderson's temptation to give all the money to Ward 11. We need a proper discussion first of all. So Alan, you are there. Can you please introduce us?
Will do, Chair, and thanks very much for accommodating my item earlier in order to attending Will and Seaforth Committee. Conscious of your previous closing comment on the previous paper about time, so I'll just get cracking on this one then. Okay, so on the 1st of September 21, members of E&I Committee agreed an area distribution of the grant, the Place-Based Investment Programme, pretty much the same as we did with the previous Town Centre Fund, adopting exactly the same calculation as the Scottish Government for the distribution nationally. It resulted in Lochaber Committee being allocated £154,144. Now, you'll recollect at the end of last year, we held a ward business meeting and there was a wish to invite bids again for the Place-Based Investment Programme grant, again, as we did with the Town Centre Fund. That process opened on the 29th of December and closed on the 21st of January, and we had a total of 12 applications being received. and the total grant requested was nearly 315,000. I don't propose to dwell on the background to the fund members. We covered that off late last year. It's reiterated in section 4 and 5 of the report. In terms of the locations of the potential investment, you may recollect with the Town Centre Fund, we were kind of constrained by eligible settlements. E&I committee removed that this time round, so all places are eligible. Section 7.1 provides a very brief summary of the projects in terms of the financial asks. Moving towards the individual projects themselves, in terms of 7.2, as is typical with this type of funding, the proposals received by the council do vary significantly in terms of projects, outputs and outcomes. They respect local communities' demands and expectations. They have their own particular local benefits and impacts. So there's kind of 4 key things members need to consider when determining these applications. The first one is, does the project satisfy one of the 7 PBIP objectives detailed in section 5? Is the expenditure capital in nature? In terms of is it a fixed physical asset? Can the expenditure be contractually committed by the 31st of March this year? Now, this is a challenge, admittedly. The programme is a five-year pipeline of funding, which is really, really welcome. But unfortunately, the grant award from the Scottish Government is only for the single financial year. We are speaking to the Scottish Government in that regard, seeking flexibility. We did so informally late last year based on E&I's agreement that we write to the Scottish Government seeking flexibility. There was an understanding, an acknowledgement of the challenges that we face in terms of lead-in times, projects being developed, etc. But it was purely hypothetical at that point. Now we're at the detail stage where we do have real projects on the table, and we will follow that up with a formal request. And the final point in terms of assessment is, does the project align with the community planning partnership objectives as well? That was a key requirement of the decision-making process agreed by E&I committee, and it was asked that area committee members take that into account when making investment decisions. And if you don't mind, Chair, I wouldn't mind bringing in the ward manager just at this point, just to make a comment in that regard.
Please do.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alan. Yeah, just in terms of the various projects that you have before you, the priorities within the Lochaber Community Planning Partnership and across the locality partnerships really cover health, environment, community confidence, housing and economy. And so in the list that you've got before you, a lot of those actually hit those buttons, and certainly none of the projects in front of you actually conflict with any of those priorities. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Dot. So if you don't mind, Chair, we'll just get cracking onto the individual projects themselves, starting at 7.4 Glenfinnan Community Hall. I've not sought to, read out the content of the bids. They are appended. There's a lot of detail there, and I'm sure members, you are more familiar with the projects than I am. Again, my comments are very brief, but focused on those key 4 points that I raised a moment ago. So in terms of Glenfinnan Hall, the Community Facilities Group are seeking the sum of 20,900 towards the capital refurbishment of a vacant property to create a community hall. So the PBIP objectives are met there. It is capital. Slight issue is in terms of deliverability. There is an element of risk there. There's a small amount of money outstanding in terms of their match funding, with 22,500 still to be secured, but that is expected early this year. And also the other risk is that tenders could be higher than the budget available, and that's where we kind of need that flexibility from the Scottish Government, that if we do approve, if members are minded to approve a grant to a project, there's still some uncertainty in terms of some projects in that regard. So I don't know, Chair, if you want to just cover off a project at a time, or whether you wish me to run through them all at once.
I think it's possibly easiest to deal with each project as we go through, if members are content with that. Sorry, Dennis, I hadn't noticed you got your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Just really for clarity, having made a declaration of interest against 2 of these projects, I just want to be clear when to step out of the discussion. I mean, I'm quite content if Alan's just doing it on a sort of top level basis and giving us his read through, but I obviously don't want to be involved in any of the discussion or debate about these issues and look to your guidance as to how we do that as we go forward. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so I assume from that, Dennis, it's your intention not, because obviously we're oversubscribed, that you're not going to take any part in the discussion whatsoever.
I have a feeling, as this is evolving, Chair, that that's probably the safest thing to do, given that I have declared an interest against 2 of the 12 items, which makes it really tricky. Obviously, I have contributions to make to the other 10, but it's really difficult to know how that could really be done in the context of this meeting.
It is difficult, and you will recall we had the same problem with the Coastal Communities Fund, where I had a number of declarations as well, and I didn't take part in those discussions. But part of the problem is, if we then excluded both you and Councillor Henderson, who has an interest in a particular item as well, then we've excluded Ward 11 members from the discussion entirely, and I think that is unreasonable. I think you should both be present for the overall discussion and grant allocation at the end, but can't take part in any discussion, or if it came to a vote on individual projects that you've declared an interest in. Maybe I can have guidance from Alistair and Dot on that, whether that's a sensible way forward in terms of governance.
That sounds sensible, Chair, and it's certainly the approach we took to the Coastal
Communities Fund. Yeah,
that's the approach we took. Yeah. So.
Okay, so if Councillor Rickson and Henderson are content with that, we will proceed. And I think, Councillor Henderson, you had declared a declaration of interest on this particular item and that you won't take part.
I did it in Glenfinnan for the simple reason I found out my daughter's chair. So.
Well, that's quite a, yes, significant interest. Okay, and that will be noted. Sorry about that, Alan, if you could proceed.
Okay, members, that's all I really have to say on the Glenfinnan Community Hall project, Chair. As I say, it satisfies the objectives. There's small risk in terms of the match funding still to come through with that one, but a significant amount is in place, and the project itself satisfies the objectives of the fund. I have nothing more to add.
Okay, members, what I propose to do is to get your agreement in principle for each project as we go through. That will leave us with an overspend, I'm sure, at the end, and then we'll have to make hard decisions. But members, are you content in principle to support this application? I take the lead from Councillor Rickson. I don't see anyone expressing discontent with that. Okay, we'll proceed on with the next one.
Lovely, thank you. So moving to 7.5, Lochaber Housing Association, in terms of their Malig housing development. They are seeking the sum of 10,700 towards the 1.4 million development of 8 social rent flat units. Again, the PBIP grant being requested here is specifically to be invested in the provision of heat pumps and landscaping. So that in itself satisfies the PBIP objectives in terms of low carbon agenda. It is capital, obviously, it's a large capital development there. It's deliverable as far as I'm concerned. The works have been tendered and a preferred bidder status awarded. So no reservations with that project, Chair.
Okay, members, any questions? Can I assume that people are content to support this item in principle? Yeah, indeed. Okay, moving on to 7.6, which is called Shopping Centre Car Park.
Yeah, you may recollect this one. Members from Town Centre Fund, round 2, we're a cool regeneration company. At the time, we're seeking to secure funds to undertake this improvement on the council-owned car park. So the council did obtain quotations for doing that work. It was slightly revised upwards given the time that's passed in that regard. It's a cool community council are now seeking the funds, 50,000, to carry out the resurfacing. So again, this is to do with town centre renewal. It was approved as a substitute project in the town centre fund that didn't move ahead. So it meets with the objectives. It is capital. As I say, I think it's deliverable. The council worked up the specification and obtained quotes, so could move forward very quickly.
Okay, local members, any comments or questions?
No, agree. Pushing this one.
Content with that one. Okay, moving on to, I think it's Canna next.
It is indeed Canna. So again, the Community Development Trust are seeking £60,000 towards their new hub at the pier. So it's a large project, estimated to cost £461,000. We'll see the site of the former coal store beside the pier being redeveloped to create a reception hub and visitor facilities. The sum requested here completes the estimated financial package. So good project in terms of meeting the PBIP objectives. It is capital. The risk here, and it's quite a significant risk, is that the programme indicates that the contract will not be awarded until after the 31st of March 22. So this is the point I raised in my preamble. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario here, because in order to secure their match funding and tie it all down, they need to tie up the financial package for the whole project by the end of the financial year. So this is something that if members were minded to approve, it's a candidate exemplar to engage with Scottish Government officials to say, this is the type of project where we do need flexibility at the Highland Council. It's nearly a £500,000 project, and in order to tie it all up, we need to carry over in that regard. So other than that particular issue, Chair, that's all I have to say on this project.
Okay, and then from your vast experience of dealing with the Scottish Government, if we were minded to support this, do you think the discussions that you would then have to have with them would lead to that flexibility? Personally,
I think so, Chair. Being totally honest with you, we had similar discussions with the Town Centre Fund. The officials I dealt with were very pragmatic and sympathetic. They understand the challenges that we have experienced in terms of COVID, Brexit, increasing costs, funders, timetables in terms of making decisions. So they're acutely aware of these issues. So I would be hopeful of a positive response in that regard.
Splendid. Okay, both Councillor Henderson and Rickson would like to contribute on this item. So Alan, first of all.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Alan's partly answered my question there, but I presume we'll probably be making up a reserve list when we're juggling with this anyway. So there would be no real risk to actually put this one on, and then it could transfer across quickly if need be, because I would presume it wouldn't be on the last day we would find out from the Scottish Government you can't do it.
No, I think that would be a pragmatic approach, Councillor Henderson. And this is one of the first committees where members are sitting down to make these decisions. So I think that is the prompt now to engage with the Scottish Government officially. This is the reason for doing it. So we've got a real example here. So I think we would get a quick response in that regard.
Splendid. Dennis, next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say I endorse this approach. I think it's just a matter of days between the 31st of March and the end of the financial year. I think it would be crazy not to proceed. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, so I take it from that, Alan, that we've got contentment in principle. So let's move on to Arisaig.
Okay, Arisaig. This is like the other housing development one which we had. We have the Community Trust at Arisaig here, seeking the sum of 40,550 towards a 1.4 million development of 6 affordable rented units. Again, the grant is requested specifically for renewable heating systems and landscaping. So again, fits the objectives of the fund. It is capital. It is deliverable. The works have been tendered and preferred bidder status awarded. So no issues from my perspective in that regard, Chair.
Local members content? And I don't see any contrary opinion from Ward 21 councillors. And then moving on to Harris Lodge.
Okay, so the Isle of Rum Community Trust, they're looking for 30,000 towards emergency repairs and survey work, statutory consents to the Harris Lodge. The long-term objective of this project is to create a rental accommodation on the island. Unfortunately, survey work is not capital and therefore deemed ineligible. And the emergency repairs are also an immediate maintenance issue, and they're deemed to be revenue in nature, so ineligible again. There's no doubt, it's evident that the property does require substantive renovation that would fall into that capital definition. But I think we need to get into a state where that survey work's done first, and we've got serious business planning in terms of the end use, so we can understand the long-term sustainability and viability before an investment decision is made. So I think the long-term objective of the project does fit the PBIP, but the short-term expenditure proposed here does not. So it's not capital in nature, and it's not deliverable as far as I'm concerned in terms of it needs that further development work to totally understand what the full costs are.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, we should be discounting it. I just checked with the local members that they've got nothing that they wish to ask on that. I don't think they have.
No, I agree, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, one of those things, unfortunately. And then we're moving on to Isle of Egg Heritage Trust and Lamrig.
Indeed, on Lamrig. So for this project, the Trust are seeking 41,000 towards a £43,500 interpretation project. I think you're all familiar with the redevelopment of the hub. It's a large, significant project, one I'm involved in with the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund, a £3.3 million project. The proposals in Appendix 1 provide a very comprehensive suite of expenditure. We do need to bottom out the precise nature and cost of some of the small elements of the signage, and whether, just to clarify, whether it's entirely eligible. So I think the amount being requested here, the 41,000, is the maximum. I can see that being revised downwards slightly, not by much though, members. It does meet the PBIP objectives. It's tied up as part of the bigger regeneration project. It is capital, and I think in terms of deliverability, the Trust have given a suite of costs, and I think works can be tailored to accommodate the budget available.
Okay, members, are we content to provide in-principle support? Yeah, I take that as so. Thank you. And then next is Fort William pump track.
Yeah, again, I assume it's a project you're familiar with. It's a large 450k project. They're nearly there, the Sports Society, with the full funding package, and they're looking for 34,000 basically to draw that to a close. The PBIP objectives are met. It is capital. Deliverable, there's just one final block of funding. If members are minded to approve PBIP today, they're awaiting 25k from the Baxter Foundation, which will close that up. The works have been tendered and preferred bidder status awarded there as well. So pretty much shovel ready, members.
Okay, thank you. Content to support in principle?
Yeah, I'm sure Andrew will agree with the Baxter Foundation. Yeah.
Well, it's not from my pockets, but there you are. Next is some planters on the promenade.
Yeah, so again, I think this is a continuation of some of the projects we saw coming through the town centre fund. So what we have here is the Fort William town team seeking just over £4,000 to purchase and install 8 planters, including shrubs, and a couple of benches as well to be located on the promenade. So the objectives are met in terms of town centre renewal. It builds on the previous investment made in this regard. It is capital and deliverable, yet it can be moved forward very, very quickly.
Okay, anyone opposed to in principle? Don't think so. Okay, and the next one, which I think is the parade, if I remember right. Yeah, parade.
Yes, indeed. It's a joint one with the Rotary Club and the Fort William town team. A smaller project this time around, seeking just £1,800 to carry out some environmental improvements. The scope of the works are really modest in nature, and they will improve the visual amenity, but they're more maintenance in nature and therefore don't satisfy the capital requirements this time round. So the objectives are met because it is improving visual amenity and town centre renewal, but it's not capital, as I say. It would be deliverable because, again, it's very, very small scale in nature.
Okay, so on the basis of what we've already decided, we must discount that. And then the waterfront.
Yeah, so Fort William Marina and Shoreline Community Interest Company are seeking 9,800 to do a preliminary feasibility study to explore the development potential of Fort William waterfront. Again, feasibility, like your Harris Lodge, it's not capital in nature, therefore ineligible.
Okay, and discount that again. And then finally, Fort William pontoons.
Again, the Marina and Shoreline Community Interest Company, they're seeking £11,735 to augment the secure £291,000 as part of the Puffer Pier project. The PBIP requested here is specifically for a 6-metre pontoon and some other fixtures and fittings associated with that. So the PBIP objectives are met. It fits with the town centre renewal, given we've got town centre fund money in there, Highland Coastal Communities Fund in there as well. It is capital in nature, but there is risk, members, and there's significant risk in that regard. We still have licensing issues remain outstanding. The dredging licence is expected mid-February, but the deposit licence expired on the 28th of January as well, and is currently being renewed. So there's still some of those matters need to be tidied up before the project can progress. And I've also said that we need a robust and current cost plan for the entire project to be prepared as well, and for that to come forward from the applicant. So I think there's a bit of more work to be done on this particular project.
Okay, I have a question on this one, Alan. You used the word augment. Does that mean this is additionality rather than the project being dependent on the chunk of money that they're asking for?
Exactly, Chair. Additional.
Okay, thank you. In principle, content to support? I think probably so. Okay, so that leaves us in the unenviable position of discounting a few because they're not eligible for one reason or another, but still be considerably over the funding that we have available. So hopefully 7.1 Alan has that table there, which indicates that that the total eligible costs are just over £273,000, which is well over the funding that we have allocated, which I need to go back in my report. Just remind Alan, can you tell me off the top of your head how much we have available?
You have available 154,144.
Okay, so we're almost doubly subscribed. Members, do we have a proposal from a particular member as to how we allocate this funding? Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Chair. It seems to me that we should obviously discount the 3 projects that we've already discussed as being ineligible, leaving 9. And to look at the projects in terms of which ones are cleanest and most deliverable. And that, I've got a list of 5 that I think are the cleanest and most deliverable, but others may have a different view. I just put that forward as a proposal.
Okay.
As a means forward. I beg your pardon, Andrew?
Would you like to share those 5 with us, Councillor Allen?
Yeah, sure. It's the starter for 10.
Yeah.
The 5 projects 3 of them are in Ward 11. You'll be surprised to hear, and only 2 in Ward 21. I've got Fort William Prom, Cool Car Park, RSA Community Trust, Isle of Egg, wee question mark on that from something Alan suggested in terms of perhaps needing a little less money than than identified in the report, and the Fort William Bike Park or Pump Track. That totals 169,000, which is still over by 15,000, and we may be able to reduce the allocation of a couple of those projects to get us under the 154. So starter for 10, Andrew.
That's very useful, Blair. I appreciate that because it gives us something to talk to. Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. And prompted by Councillor Allen, I'll give you an alternative starter for 10, but I'm quite happy for it to be shot down, Chair. And I appreciate his putting 3 projects in Ward 11 in there. I think my approach has been on the terms of whole community benefit. In other words, the projects which I feel can benefit the most people within a particular community. And on that basis, I would be inclined to put forward the Glenfinnan one, a small community, but the whole community stands to benefit. The Cool one, because it's our biggest population area in Ward 11 and there are substantial improvements taking place there. The Pump Track, which I think benefits widely right the way across Lochaber. And finally, the Canna one, because some of the small island communities have a real struggle in this respect. Now, that would come to 164,000. We've got 154,000 to spend, and I would propose perhaps knocking 10k off the Canna one because it's plugging a gap in their funding, and it might be possible for them to pick up the other 10k. But Chair, quite happy to be shot down. It's just a starter for 20 in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, but Councillor Henderson may wish to comment because, of course, that is some different projects within Ward 11. But first of all, I'm gonna comment on it as well. I'm extremely pleased to hear that there's cross-ward support for the Pump Track and acknowledgement that this is a project that has a much wider benefit than just where it's located and will benefit the whole of the greater Fort William area, and it's something I certainly would like to see on the list of projects that are approved. And I recognise and I understand why Councillor Allen has included the Promenade work, which is relatively modest, and I would like to support that, but maybe in the circumstances that's something that we can look at supporting maybe through other means, and maybe from next year's ward discretionary budget, as it's a fairly modest amount. And on that basis, I would be inclined to support the proposal that Councillor Rickson has provided, because I'd leave it to maybe the greater knowledge of Ward 11 issues on those particular Ward 11 projects and which ones should get preference. But if we could find a way of including the pump track within the overall allocation, and maybe looking at, for Ward 21 councillors, to find another way of supporting the Promenade improvements, I would certainly support that. So I'm going to go to Councillor Henderson first, and then maybe back to Councillor Allen and Sarah, if you, and Councillor Fannett, if you wish to make a contribution, please feel free to pop your hand up. Alan, first of all.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. I'm not a million miles away from Dennis. You'll be surprised to know, or not surprised to know. Obviously, I'm not going to comment on the Glenfinnan one, but I would certainly be supportive of Cool, Canna, and that which can be reduced. And by the way, I'm not going to solve your mathematical problem. I'm still over as well. I would be very supportive of the pump track. I've followed that one all the way through, and it's been a really good community effort there through, and I think it's got great possibilities for the whole area, because that's where we're moving on to. I've seen these operating in the city. Fantastic altogether. I would be supportive of the town team, the front work on the planters. That might be something that could be done through our discretionary, to be quite honest, but I would certainly be supportive of it there. And I've just got this soft spot for the pontoons part. You know, we wouldn't be touching the one that's not possible, the feasibility, but the extra little pontoon. I know the benefits that would probably bring. You know that yourself from tenders coming in, and as more boats are wanting to use it. So that's where I am. So I'm still over, but not a million miles away from you both. Thanks.
Okay, Alan, I appreciate that. Likewise, I'd like to support the pontoons, but at the back of my mind, I just wonder again whether we can support that in other ways, or in the next financial year. Certainly, as there's some uncertainty on the deliverability, and I am conscious that we have contributed through other funds previously, and I was attracted by the fact that there were other projects that we haven't previously supported that we could support on this occasion. But likewise, I have an open mind on that. Blair, you've got your hand up. You wanted to come back and comment on what we've discussed.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just taking into account everyone else's comments on my original proposal. Fort William Prom, okay, if we can commit to, as ward members, to looking at that through the discretionary funding, that'd be good. So we could take that off, but still support it in another way. Cool car park seems to have universal support, as does the bike park. Now, I had a couple of other things in, including Isle of Egg and Arisaig, but I think Dennis and Alan are pushing on for Glenfinnan and Canna. Although Alan might want to just clarify issues there. Glenfinnan was short on match funding, I think, so there's a deliverability issue there. And Canna Hub, there's a potential to be too late for this bidding round, and we had talk of having a reserve list. So we could maybe put Canna in there for clarity with Scottish Government and have something in the background to come forward should that fail. So hopefully those comments will take this discussion forward a wee bit.
That's brilliant, Blair. Alan Webster, that is, could you possibly comment on those 2 points that Blair's just made?
Yeah, so in terms of Glenfinnan, you're right, there's 22,500 still to be brought into the package, the National Lottery Community-Led Fund. They've applied for 7,400. The applicant has indicated that the decision would be early 2022, and they're also looking for 15,100 from the Green and Community Assets Fund, high, again, early 22. So there's a risk there that they either don't come in or they come in too late. And the CANA situation is they cannot commit the funds this financial year, but they need the money as to secure the other 400,000 that they've got sitting pending. So it's absolutely crucial as far as they're concerned to receive PBIP in order to secure those other funds. So I appreciate that's a challenge and that's the risk, but both these will not commit this financial year, but really important to pull the financial package together. And I think that's the scenario that the council need to outline to the Scottish Government. But this is the challenges that some of these community-led projects face. They've got a cocktail of funding with funders with different timetables and constraints, and that's why flexibility is absolutely paramount.
Okay, members, I think we're coming towards a decision. So may I suggest that we approve the allocations to Glenfinnan, Cool, the CANA Trust and the Fort William Pump Track, bearing in mind that the CANA Trust may not be deliverable, depending on whether discussions with the Scottish Government are fruitful. And then in those terms, to have on a reserve list, and this is in no particular order, if CANA was not possible, that we include Arisay Community Trust, the housing development there, the Lochaber Housing Association Malig housing development, and the Fort William Marina and Shoreline. Now that takes us up to £63,000, so we'd have to look at cutting those costs, and would leave the Fort William Promenade under the ward discretionary budget. Any particular views on that? Alan, you've popped your hand up. Alan Henderson, that is.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to add one thing, but I failed to mention there as well, is just to remind members that this is a 5-year programme. Whilst we only have a 1-year grant letter from the Scottish Government, there is an expectation that we'll receive another one for the next financial year very shortly as well, just to bear that in mind in your considerations.
Indeed, that's very useful. Councillor Henderson and Councillor Rickson.
That's actually a very good point that you reminded me with, Alan, because actually I was just going to come in and put, since we're in a quandary over CANA, I was going to put Egg as an island in there, but bearing in mind it's an interpretive centre there that could actually easily slip in, and probably easier slip into it than the renewable heat for the Malig and Arisay houses there. I think in that case, yeah, I'll go with what Andrew said first, which is the Malig and the Arisay houses there, and keep Egg back for a future funding round. So yeah, fairly happy with that just now. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, without commenting on the others, I'm in agreement with your proposal for the first 4, which is Glenfinnan, Cool, CANA and the Pump Track, which would come to 164,000, but I'm in agreement with that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so have we got an agreement then? I think so. Have you got all the information you need, Alan?
Just double checking the figures, Chair.
We've probably still to take the 10 off CANA, I think, unfortunately.
Take the 10 off CANA.
That's what it is. So CANA's the negotiable one.
It's a negotiable one, and if there was a possibility that it would not proceed as as intended, would look at those other projects outlined. Councillor Allen, you popped your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I wonder, in making this decision, whether we could prioritise the reserve list.
Yeah.
I say so on the basis, well, perhaps as part of this, Alan could clarify on a matter. I think he suggested that an invitation for the next round of funding might come in very soon. And would we deal with that at the next area committee? And would it be an opportunity for further projects to be included? You know, and I invite further bids.
Okay. Alan will be able to clarify in terms of timing, but it will, of course, will be at a future area committee. And like I think when we were minded when we dealt with the Coastal Communities Fund and several bids we were not able to support, and the intention was that they would be considered in the next funding round and new bids also added to that. I think that is possibly the best way forward, bearing in mind that we've got an election before the next area committee, so those newly elected councillors may have different priorities. So I don't think we can say that those bids that we're unable to support today would automatically get support in the future, but they would be reconsidered, and obviously they have a level of support already, and I would imagine that will continue beyond the election. Alan, timetable for confirmation of future years funding?
Yeah, as I say, it's a 5-year programme. E&I committee agreed for this financial year 21-22, sorry, that there would be an area allocation distribution of the funds. It's for this year only. When we get the next financial award, next financial year award, again, that will go to E&I to determine how they wish to proceed with in terms of area allocations again. So as I say, it's a 5-year programme, but the actual distribution of funds has not been determined, and that will be for the new committee to take account of.
Okay. That's very helpful. Blair, would you like to, as you gave our starter for 5, would you like to give us a starter for 5 for the priority of the reserve list?
Oh, now you're asking. You give me a couple of minutes, see if anyone else has got a contribution to make, Andrew. Is that okay? I'll just have a wee look.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to suggest that we put the Fort William Marina and the pontoon extension at the top of that reserve list. And then I'm relaxed about the other projects that I mentioned earlier. So the Lochaber Housing Association, the Aristeg Community Trust, which order those two could be put in. Now, I'm relaxed about that. Dennis.
Sorry, Chair, just to say, I won't make any comments on the reserve list if you don't mind, given I've declared an interest on one of the items there. Thank you, Chair.
No problem, and that's noted, Dennis. Blair.
Okay, so thanks, Andrew. I'm just looking at those. It seems to me that between Canna and Glenfinnan, these are the potential ones that could drop off for the reasons that we've just discussed, which are, just look at that. Glenfinnan is, how much is Glenfinnan? 21,000 round money, and it's 60,000 for Canna. That's 81,000. So we need to potentially look to up to £81,000 worth of reserves and order them. I have no problems with your ordering around the pontoon, LHA and the Aristeg Community Trust, which amounts to 62,000. So there's approximately £19,000 worth of other projects that we could prioritise in the event that Canna and Glenfinnan don't transpire this financial year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think maybe it's difficult to put because of the size of the other bids to include them in the reserve list. I think if we got into that situation, which I think would be quite an extraordinary situation that both Glen Finnan and Canna fell, and that we did have that, then maybe councillors would have to meet again in a special meeting to determine that. That may be the best way forward, Blair, if members are content with that. I saw a little nod from Mr. Webster there, I think, to support that. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, Blair hasn't got 81 to play with. He's only got 71 because remember we were only allowing 50 for Canna to get our money right in the first place. So that takes you closer to it. Thanks.
Okay, so I think we've got agreement then. So Fort William Shoreline being the priority, and then I think it was the Malig housing development, followed by the Arasake Community Trust housing development, which was the larger figure.
Yeah, good.
Okay, there are Alan, Webster. I think we have agreement.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very clear.
Brilliant. Thank you, members. Really useful discussion. Some exciting projects there that we've been able to support. Always difficult when we're oversubscribed, but we got there in the end. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Alan.
Thanks again, members.
Okay.
Bye.
Bear with me 1 second whilst I get back to my agenda. So let's move on back to item 5. Have we got Don Essen with us for the Kinloch Leven Associated School Group?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members.
Good morning, Don. How are you today?
Very well, thanks. You've
Okay.
been a busy meeting this morning.
It is a very busy meeting, possibly not as busy as your life at the moment, juggling all the demands within the Western area and teaching supply and COVID-related issues. So it's possibly quite appropriate that we turn to Kinloch Leven Associated School Group, which is facing those problems extremely acutely, as you're well aware, and certainly I am, as I've got a daughter inside at home again today. Don, as always, a detailed report. Are there any particular highlights that you wish to mention from that report briefly before we take any questions and comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, there's not any particular highlights. As members are aware, the format here is the standard format of the report in terms of the individual ESGs, and this morning it's looking at the Kinloch Leven ESG, and I intend to go through the different parts of it if you wish me to do so. There are a number of links to information which members can look at their discretion at other times, but this is the normal format. What we're hoping to do, and members may be aware of, is that at a future ward business meeting, we'll be taking the 4 secondary school attainment group, the attainment reports to ward business meetings, and that will be taking place in March.
Okay, Don, may I suggest, rather than going through each section individually to save your voice, can we focus in on a number of sections which I'm sure my Ward 21 colleagues would be most interested in at the moment because of local concerns and so forth. So could we concentrate on, first of all, on the staffing complement and have your comments on how that's been impacted by COVID and what's the long-term staffing prognosis for the Associated School Group, but particularly mindful of the high school at the moment and the challenges that is facing. Is that okay, Don?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as members will see from the table regarding staffing, it's got the breakdown of the staffing across the ESG in terms of primary and secondary, and this is looking at the staffing as per the staffing formula which both primary and secondary schools have to adhere to. So you can see there that in terms of Kinloch Leven High School, We've got the staffing complement of 18.8 teaching staff, and in Kinlochleven Primary School we've got 5.38 in terms of teaching staff. In terms of moving forward, we know that we are going through, we very much understand and appreciate the major concerns which have been shared regarding the ongoing and most recent staffing at the high school. And the current situation is a very challenging situation, which has been further impacted on by the lack of local and Highland and national supply teachers. This has also been heightened by a steep rise in COVID-related absences over the last fortnight or so. And the Highland Council are continuing to work with the local authority, supply teachers and a range of organisations, including West Highland College and the Virtual Academy and the Time Plan supply agency, in order to cover and look at cover for supporting the school. And as the chair and members will know, we are very much praising the work and efforts of Miss Playfair's head teacher, Mr Hanaway's deputy head, and their staff for their work and continue to work with a very difficult situation regarding staffing. So we're dealing with a very complex situation, which is to do with staff absence, longer term staff absence, and the most recent COVID situation. And what we've been doing is very much working with the current challenges and linking with supply teachers, both locally and across the authority. And there's been a lot of work done. Workforce planning have contacted all primary and secondary supply teachers. They did so previously and have done so again in order to look at attracting supply teachers to Kinlochleven. And this has included looking at and offering fixed term contracts and supporting travel and accommodation in order to do that. So the situation is very, very challenging just now. I know that at least one of our local members attended the Parent Council meeting that was held on Thursday evening with the Kinlochleven High School Parent Council regarding this. And there's a number of ongoing actions which I know there's been details circulated from that meeting. And what I'll say to members is that there'll also be a note coming out from Highland Council regarding the items discussed at the meeting and the agreed actions from the meeting as well. I am available to meet with members at a later date to discuss in more detail some of the ongoing challenges that we've got and looking at the different solutions as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. That's I'm sure that information will be shared amongst ward councillors once that note is available. Don, may I also suggest that we have a standing invitation for you to attend our ward business meetings over the next few months, just so that we have a regular update on staffing at Kinlochleven High School, and Dot will be able to give you the dates for that. But it needn't be too onerous or lengthy, but I think just so that we've got it on the agenda and that we can continue having those, and if need be, have meetings out with that timescale as well to discuss any particular issues. But I think that would be appreciated by my colleagues. Sarah, you've got your hand up.
Yep. Thank you very much. Good morning, Don, or good afternoon. Good to see you. Yes, I was at the meeting on Thursday, and obviously, as you could see, the anger was big anger actually in Kinlochleven at the moment because of the situation. I'm hearing fixed term contracts, fixing the problem till the summer. Well, I hope obviously it will be sorted so that the students can finish the year smoothly with staff to teach them. But my concern is that we are thinking short term. Remember that we are where we are, not just because of COVID, but because there's been a culture of fixed term contracts which have which has made actually teaching in Kinlochleven less attractive. Now, what I want to make sure is that we're not just fixing the problem till the summer, but we're going to find long-term solutions to make sure that in August we are properly staffed for the future here in Kinlochleven, so that teaching in Kinlochleven is attractive and there is more, and teachers are going to stay, and there is more stability in the learning for pupils here in this part of Lochaber. So short term, yeah, but it's not, we need more than that.
Thank you, Councillor Fannett. Yes, in terms of, we outlined the short-term matters as we move forward, but in terms of long-term matters, we have our annual staffing review of both primaries and secondaries, which takes place really from March onwards, and they'll be meeting very soon to discuss the Kinlochleven High School and the associated primary schools in terms of staffing, and looking at the complements of staffing, and also looking at the matters which have been raised by yourself, Councillor Fannett, and also by some of the other councillors regarding looking at the long-term sustainability of this. So these will be progressed as we're moving forward.
Thank you, Don. Could we have we're in the midst of a perfect storm, and that perfect storm now also includes the need to find a new head teacher, as Gemma Playfair is found another post elsewhere in the country, and congratulations for her doing that. I would say that in the short time she's been in the school, she's transformed the ethos of the school in her own way, to the benefit of the school. But can we have confirmation that workforce planning is proceeding with pace to advertise that post, and there will be no delays, as we perhaps experienced in the past, in filling these posts, in getting them advertised? So could you just confirm that? And finally, I would add that I'm extremely concerned, not just as local councillor, but also as a parent, that we were getting into the stage where people are very seriously thinking about transferring their children to Lochaber High School. And I would include myself, regrettably, within that. And for understandable reasons, and acknowledging that Lochaber High School has its own particular challenges and is certainly not a perfect school. I don't think any school is perfect, but I would be concerned that without the council being seen to take decisive long-term action, as Sarah has indicated, we will get into the stage where parents are seeking to have their children placed elsewhere, and that we get into the downward spiral of a school that then becomes unviable in the long term. And I would be very concerned about that. So please, I don't expect you to comment on that, Don, but please pass that on. I know I've spoken to you about this separately, on to others within the service. But could I just have a comment on workforce planning and arrangements for replacement head teacher?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of timescales, being informed by workforce planning that the head teacher post should be advertised tomorrow, with a closing date of the 21st of February. And after we've received all the applications, then we'll be proceeding with the normal recruitment process thereafter.
And I'm assuming the parent council are aware of that timescale.
In terms of, we shared some of the details on Friday, and this is the update regarding the timescales.
Brilliant, thank you. Sarah, you wanted to come back?
Yes, and there's another, thank you, Andrew, Councillor Baxter, sorry. There's another issue I wanted to add. Smaller schools have a staffing problem which is different from what you find in bigger schools. And one absence at Kinlochleven High School actually has a greater impact than it would have actually in a bigger school. The other thing is that staffing is an issue in smaller schools because it makes delivering the curriculum more difficult. I mean, if you look at languages, for example, they can only offer one foreign language because finding teachers who can teach other languages would be too expensive, because it would be only a couple of hours per week because the group would be smaller and the school is smaller. Can we have a look again and review the staffing formula for smaller schools in the Highlands, and particularly here in Lochaber, so that there is more flexibility, cooperation with other schools, so that a wider curriculum can be offered, and also when members of staff are have absences, actually it has a smaller impact on the rest of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fannett. Yes, we've got a particular challenge in the West in terms of eight of our 9 schools would be classed as smaller schools in that perspective, and only Lochaber High School is the larger size school. So we know that the ongoing challenges of recruitment and retention to these, and some of the disproportionate impacts of staff absence on the delivery of the curriculum. In terms of reviewing, there is an ongoing review in terms of looking at the staffing formulas and looking at the details regarding that, which takes place on an ongoing basis with workforce planning. So these points have been raised previously, and we know that as we move ahead, they'll be reviewed again.
Yeah, and also when I talk about the curriculum, don't forget, I mean, also making sure that more courses are available. I was mentioning languages, but you know, across the curriculum, to make sure that other schools are not more attractive and parents are less tempted to move their children to Lochaber High School. Thank you.
I think the virtual schoolwork that the Education Committee have been doing perhaps is one way of answering that question in broadening the curriculum. I know that's particularly part of the aim of that project. Certainly in the past, technology has enabled students who are wishing to take advanced hires at Kinloch-Leven, where we don't have a teacher to provide that advanced hire, have been able to successfully complete their studies in a virtual means. I know it's not ideal, but we also have to recognise the limitations on resources, which inevitably lead towards some of these challenges in delivering the widest curriculum possible. So I'll allow you to come back, and then I'm going to bring this particular item to an end.
Thank you very much. Yes, and also when we're talking about virtual, can we consider a blended approach to the job descriptions? Why can't we have, for example, a teacher who would operate between several schools and would visit those schools to have physical contact with the pupils, but could also deliver some of the lessons via online devices? So it doesn't have to be a 100% virtual like virtual college, but it could be actually a blended approach and make some create some new jobs, you know, which would be which would enable actually teachers to deliver to several schools in the area whilst still visiting and having contacts with the pupils. That's thinking outside the box, but I think that's something to consider. Thank you.
Okay, Don, would you like to briefly respond to that?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Fannett. Yes, we are continuing to look at different models, including blended learning in order to do so. And as the Chair mentioned, we're continuing to work with our Highland Virtual Academy to look at and increase the menu of courses on option, but also to link with West Highland College and other colleges regarding that. So the offer has actually increased considerably over the last number of years, and I think even at the most recent area committee, when we were looking at Lochaber ASG, we've seen huge benefits from the work and support of West Highland College in order to support the schools in Lochaber area in the widest sense, but also in the West area. So we will continue to look at and investigate different models of delivery in order to support.
Okay, Don, is there anything else you want to add? I think we've had a good discussion about the staffing issues.
I think just to make members aware that we've got ongoing issues with COVID down in Lochaber, obviously in Fort William and wider Lochaber. And just for update regarding Kinlochleven ASG today, we've got Durer Primary School closed because of COVID, and we've got one of the classes at Balhoolish. We're pleased that the nursery's back at Balhoolish, and we've got obviously challenges which you're all well aware of regarding Kinlochleven High School and the primary school as well. So just to make you aware that COVID, the numbers of COVID in the area and in Kinlochleven ASG are far higher than they have been previously, and this is impacting on pupil attendance but also staff attendance as well.
Thank you very much, Don, as always, for your time. Note the report, members. Thank you very much. And then we move on to, I think we're moving on to housing issues now. Housing performance report, which is Sandra McLennan. You there, Sandra?
I am.
Hello, Sandra. Lovely to see you. Now, again, these are always comprehensive reports, so I don't propose that you speak to it, but I'll ask members for any comments or questions, please. Now, I think you're going to get off somewhat lightly, Sandra. I'm almost determined now to find some awkward question to ask you. No, members, are we content to note the report?
Yes, yes.
Okay, can then we deal with item 7, which is the housing revenue account? Are there any questions or comments on the housing revenue account? Oh, but how bothersome. Oh, Dennis. Well, I think you're on mute, Dennis.
I beg your pardon, Chair. Age. I hope that I'm not commenting inappropriately here. I just thought, am I right in thinking, Sandra, that garages are included in this item 7?
Yes, Councillor Rickson.
And you would, yeah, and you were looking for our approval, I think, on the sort of rate. And Chair, my gut reaction would be to go with the same rise as is being experienced by council houses, as in the 1% rise, because there's a sort of there's something to be said for being uniform with that. My only thing I was going to say, Chair, is that first of all, my compliments to how comprehensive the reports about garages have been over the last couple of years. I think, you know, your body has really taken it upon themselves to sort of, you know, look at the issue, come up with a really comprehensive listing of what the garages are like and the state they're in. And the only thing that I would point out is the comment in 8.3, which was that the removal of garages has actually had positive feedback within the community. And I note that because I do note that you have given us sort of two options here. One is to repair in order to take more rent from in the future, and the other one is to remove to allow more vacant space. And I just feel that with the patterns of car holding perhaps evolving over a period of time, I wonder whether we shouldn't be looking more often at removing the ones which are, you know, really past redemption as being a good thing to do, given that feedback you got at 8.3. I would not die in a ditch for this, Sandra. It's just that the response that we got from the public struck me. And I think people do appreciate open space. And I'm not sure that the pattern of car holding these days is quite what it was when I was a child, when everybody went out on a Sunday and polished their car in the sunshine. I don't think that's the case any longer. So I'm not sure there is the same need for garages. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Annan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would concur with Dennis's comments about the quality and depth of reports we've had recently in connection with garages, although I have no particular question or issue in relation to this particular report, other than to support Dennis's suggestion that we go for the 1% being in line with the rental increase previously agreed for housing. And yeah, that's all I'd have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And may I just finally echo the sentiment about garage, particularly as it was something that I pushed for over, I can see Sandra nodding her head, over a considerable period of time. So we're in a much better and clearer position than we were in the past. Sandra.
I just wanted to add, Chair, that we are consulting with the communities on removal of garages or, condition of garages. Some of the garages that we've removed recently, it just has not been viable to repair them. And certainly the photographs recently from Cool, we've made quite a considerable improvement in the council house estates where we have removed garages. So we are consulting with communities on future use.
Thank you very much. So we have a proposal from Councillor Rickson and seconded by Councillor Allen for a 1% increase in garage rents. I suspect that everyone will support that. I don't see any dissent. So we note the report and we approve a 1% increase as proposed.
Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Sandra. That was nice and easy for you. And that now brings us on to Housing Revenue Account Capital Programme, and I think that is Brian Cameron.
Hello, Chair. Good morning, members.
Good afternoon, Brian. Lovely to have you as always. It's so easy with the Housing Department reports because they're always so it's comprehensive and easy to follow, so we don't need. You'll be pleased to know presenting, but colleagues, do you have any particular questions or comments that you want to make at the moment? Councillor Allen and then Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see you again, Brian. I hope you're well. I'm interested in the report in connection with whether or not any of the proposed works contained within the report relate to the flats at Clagan. So that's my first question. And the second one is relating to the Clagan flats as well. And that is, we previously discussed, and I think and agreed, a way forward for the options around the environmental improvements at Clagan flats. I know this isn't the direct subject of the report. I wonder if you had any further information or update with regard to that. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, Brian, can you deal with those two issues?
I would need to get back to Councillor Allen in regard to the flats at Clagan. I'm not sure if they were included within the address list, but I can speak to the local team just to confirm that. I think the works at the Clagan, I think was that the quadrangles?
Yes.
Am I right in saying that? I know they were getting progressed by their team. I'm not sure if Sandra McLennan is still on the call. Sorry, Sandra, and if you're able to get a far better update than I would, apologies.
Yeah, it's really been led by Lachie McDonald, the repairs manager. So we can get an update though on progress and where that particular project is.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's answered both of those questions, Councillor Allen, in a roundabout way. Councillor Rickson.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Brian, for the report. Can I just reiterate something which I know I've commented about to you before, and that's in item 6.3, we refer to the strategic commitment towards increased spend on heating energy efficiency measures to assist with improving energy efficiency, and in 6.5 that there's a future report which will highlight the estimated costs to achieve compliance with these targets. And just to say that I think those two paragraphs encapsulate the nub of the problem. We all know where we want to go. The costs of getting there may be very, very significant, but I think it's absolutely critical to keep these front and centre of our sort of discussions as we go forward. Fuel poverty is not only a huge issue, it threatens to become a much worse issue with energy prices going up, the energy cap having been lifted. And at the moment, although the council is doing significant things, and I also pay tribute to what the Lochaber Housing Association and Sandra McLennan have done in terms of utilising the energy redress scheme to help people in Lochaber, the fact of the matter is that we're actually only dealing with the symptoms and not the cause. So what your work will enable us hopefully to do in the future will be to tackle the cause, and I think it needs to be kept front and centre as we go forward. Many thanks indeed, Chair. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, members, are you content to support the recommendations in the report, including the capital allocation? Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, Sandra, for your time today. Sorry for the long wait. Okay, we will move on to item 10, which is funding application for the place-based investment funds. This was the allocation that we set aside at a previous area committee to assist those groups providing mental health and wellbeing services. We've got an application from the Ewan's Room for £15,000 for us to consider and approve. Dot, do you need to add anything to this report?
No, Chairman, just by way of update though, at section 5.2, Ewan's Room has now been told they've been successful in one of their funding bids to the Highland Community Mental Health Fund, which has attracted £9,960 into the project as well. So that just happened on Friday. Thank you.
Okay, members, this is a Ewan's Room. We'll all be aware of the work that they do within our communities. A very good organisation in my mind, and I'm happy to support this application of that particular funding that we had set aside. I can see Councillor Allen supports that. Sarah, you wanted to make a contribution?
Just wanted to say, do you want me to withdraw from the conversation given the...
It's fine. It's fine. You declared a non-financial interest. As long as you don't take any part, that's fine, Sarah. I would have thrown you out otherwise. Don't worry. Members, happy to approve that?
Happy to agree that one, yes.
Thank you very much. That's good news. And then on to item 11, which is the play park funding, the new allocations. Again, this is fairly straightforward, I think, in terms of the allocation of money as previously discussed, and we're now agreeing that formally is set out in item 2.1 of your report. Are there any particular questions or comments that members want to make? Questions to Debbie? I think Debbie's here somewhere in the background. Councillor Rickson, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. It's just prompted by sight of you repurposing your COVID ward discretionary budget outstanding sums. Can I ask if we should be doing the same in Ward 11, please? I think we have an outstanding balance of 1432.50. Which I think we were minded or considering repurposing, and I wonder if that would be appropriate at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm Dot's nodding her head, so I assume we can do that as part of this meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rickson. Yes, that should be included in there, and then that would close off your COVID balance, so we can record that as a repurpose towards play provision as well.
Councillor Henderson, I assume that you're content with that?
Fully in agreement with that. Yep, thanks. We've discussed it. Yep.
Fantastic. Members, are you content to agree the recommendations as outlined in 2.1?
Yeah, you're putting shock on Debbie's face here by agreeing so quickly.
Right. Item 12 is, I think, the minutes of our previous meeting on the 8th of November, which have been previously approved by full council. Are you content to just note that?
Noted.
Okay, members, thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance this morning, and to the officers. Now, as this is my last Lochaber committee, in fact, the last committee of this particular term of office, may I wish all of you, whether you are standing or retiring at the next election, my best wishes. Good luck for those of you who are intending to stand again at that election. May I thank you for all of your forbearance and cooperation over the last 5 years during my chairmanship of this committee. And I would like to just give special thanks, which I'm sure you will support, to 4 of our officers. So Dot, Derek and Emma, who have given sterling service to the Lochaber area, particularly to this committee and to us as councillors. I would say that they are the unsung heroes of Highland Council. I know that I can be ultra critical of councillor officers, but that tends to be those based in Inverness. And without Dot, Derek and Emma, between the 3 of them, Lochaber would certainly be a poorer place. And finally, from a very personal point of view, I would like to thank Alistair McInnes, who is an extremely patient committee clerk, goes beyond professionalism, and has vainly tried to keep me on the straight and narrow, not just at this committee, but in other places as well. I think possibly me going off the lead that he likes to keep me firmly tethered to has maybe led to problems for him elsewhere within headquarters. And if that's the case, Alistair, in the past, I wish to apologise for that. But once again, thank you for all your support that you have provided to this committee over the last 5 years. It is extremely appreciated by not just by myself, but I'm sure by all my colleagues as well.